So Nick, thanks for warming everyone up with a great trivia question. I actually learned something new. That was better than the story of the name behind Zinger, which if anyone doesn't know, they can come and ask me a little bit later on. You know it? I'm sure you do. There you go. Thanks also to the Casual Connect staff. Well, I think the event is fantastic. Today's talk is about keeping your Indiedentity. So are you guys, can we just get a little show of hands of developers in here? Yeah, nice, good. And developer and behind the camera, nice, multitasking. Keeping your Indiedentity is essentially how, as an indie developer, you can actually keep your identity and keep working in your career how you want to be, how you want to develop games, and keep being the person who you are. So in today's lecture, I'm going to cover a couple of things. I'm going to cover some key attributes of what indie developers and keeping their Indiedentity is. I'm going to cover some success stories of indie developers that we've seen in our company. And I'm also going to give some tips around indie developers looking to either self-publish or publish. So there should be time for questions in the end. So what is Indiedentity? I think the best way to explain the strive or the goal for people being indies is essentially to look into the movie industry, where you can see people throughout time who've really strived for their lives and their characters for being true seekers of their own independence. And we'll start with losing the PowerPoint and then move on to Jason Bourne. Jason Bourne, who strove across 4 movies, and I can guarantee you there's probably more to come, has been fighting for 4 whole movies about figuring out who the person he is against the people who created him. If we look at Tony Stark, aka Iron Man, he's the guy we all want to be, right? He actually chose his path as a kid. He got a good step up from his dad, but actually ended up being true to his own identity, being an independent person, and is the superhero we all want to be. But as indie developers, most of us kind of associate with this guy, Kick-Ass. So Kick-Ass is young, he's starting up, he's figuring out what he wants to be in his career, and he's hoping that society will accept him for who he is. And this can actually be really translated nicely into the world of game development. There's no parallel here between Kick-Ass and a typical indie developer, and I'm really glad no one in the audience is wearing that exact outfit today. I would have given a prize if someone was, but I might have had to dip into Nick's stash of prizes that he's got over there. So as an indie developer, what are the attributes? What makes you what makes your Indiedentity? So the first is you're motivated by your passion for games. You develop, you eat, you sleep, you drink, you dream your game. It's your life. It's your entire life. It's everything that you do. You deal with this ongoing battle in life to actually stay true to actually what you want to develop versus what you think is going to, create downloads, create noise, get your name out there, get your studio out there. You own the development process from the beginning, and in most cases to the end. When you publish, sometimes you share a little bit of that ownership towards the end, but the game is yours from the beginning to end. It's something that you're proud of. And you have a strong commitment to your community. So when you have a problem, when you have an issue, you've got a group of indie developer friends who you generally hang out with and you talk to, and whether it's online or face-to-face, and you guys tackle your problems and your issues together. Sometimes indie developers can be a little bit over-ambitious, and a game that's meant to take 4 months ends up taking a year and 4 months, or sometimes longer. It's a common trait, and it's something that we tend to battle with day to day. Very protective over our ideas and code. Our game, our idea, we want to make it succeed, and we don't want anyone else to steal it. So it goes quiet until you want everyone to know about it, and then you make it as loud as you possibly can. And finally, failure, more often than not, is not necessarily strong commercial success of your game, although it's something that you want, but it's more often peers not liking your game and people whose opinions are important to you saying that your game sucks. So bearing all that in mind, success for indie developers, what does it mean? So if we go onto the commercial side, we know the numbers. The numbers are well publicized. There's 1.5 billion users out there across Android and iOS. And that translates to roughly 2 million apps out there across both platforms, and around 400,000 developers who are actually making games or apps for those app stores themselves. And you generally see a payout of about $6 billion, according to Forbes, as I said, around the different games out there. So we all have Clash of Clans, we all have Candy Crush, we all have numerous titles in the forefront of our mind. But if you strip it back a little bit, expectations start to come out. So if you're looking on Android, the average revenue per app is about $1,000. And if you're looking on iOS, it's about $4,000. So doesn't quite sound like the $1 million a day that Clash of Clans was seeing. And we all know where Supercell are now. If you actually look at a developer who's got a few more apps out there, you're kind of looking at about $6,000 on Android and about $20,000 in revenue that you're looking at on iOS. So all of a sudden, the stark realities of commercial success are staring and flashing at you in the face. So what I want to do at the moment is actually talk about some successes that we see around indie development and companies or games that have actually managed to retain their Indiedentity. The first game, and none of these games, I hope some of these people have heard of these games. It'd actually be good to see if anyone has. I'm betting that it'll be a small number. But the first game is Gravity Duck. Anyone? 1, 2, there we go. Gravity Duck was a game that was actually developed for Flash, for the web, 4 years ago. And you can see by the graphics, it's probably not surprising that it was a Flash game 4 years ago. Earlier on this year, Gravity Duck was released with a publisher on mobile as a paid app. And it actually had really good success. The game itself made the top 50 in over 30 countries on iOS. And it actually made the top 10 in adventure games in over 50 countries. The game was published by Ravenous, and the real success story here is not just the good rankings and not what's happening with the game itself, but actually the fact that the developer, a one-man indie studio in Helsinki, didn't actually have to give up a lot of what the game was working with the publisher. The graphics, the gameplay, the way the whole game works is actually really, really similar to what it was when it was the web version 4 years ago. And there's another key important element, actually, that's happened with this game more recently. It was actually a week ago. They changed the pricing to free. They're trying to figure out how to monetize it now. The publisher's working with them well in doing it. And if you go into App Annie, either now, preferably after the presentation, you can see that the rankings have shot up and it's actually been featured by Apple again. And this is some 9 months after it's been released. So this is a real success. And if people start thinking of success in these terms, you start getting an idea of what's easily achievable rather than the sky straight away. They're working, they've got a great relationship, the developer and the publisher together, and they're actually working on more titles together, and that's just the way they're going. They're really, really happy. The next game is a game from an Israeli gaming studio called Nitako. Has anyone heard of Save Tashi? 2, 3, awesome, there you go. Save Tashi was a free game, a freemium game that came out actually 2 years ago. It is a puzzle game, and interesting story, the Israeli studio actually acquired the rights for the character and built the whole game around the character, and I know that the developer's wife did all the audio recordings for the Save Tashi character, so Saving Tashi was all her voice. And essentially the game came out as a freemium game, and talking to the developers and understanding what success meant for them, I delved a little bit further into what the title did. So the title actually ended up coming in the top 50 overall for quite some time in over 50 countries by Apple, so it got featured. Now, they're not overly happy with their success for the title. And I delved into it a little bit more. I said, well, you know, people are very protective over download numbers. And I said, how many downloads did you get? 1.7 million. And I thought, wow, okay, 1.7 million. To me, that sounds like success. What went wrong? They said that they didn't manage to convert their free users to paid users. That was the big issue for them. And I talked to them a little bit more and I said, well, what do you think about the idea that you now have 1.7 million users who like your game and are waiting for the next one? And I think it's pretty obvious and evident to them that they're pretty happy the fact that they do have those users and they're, you know, talking and looking at games both, they self-published actually, save Tashi, but they're looking at working in publishing and self-publishing deals to build success for themselves in the future. So in my view, 1.7 million captive users, it's success for the future. So the big question for indies is, do I try and get a publishing deal or do I self-publish? Where can I go? What can I learn? I'm going to talk a little bit about both. So if you want to self-publish, in my view, there's a couple of key lessons that you should focus on. And they're both up there. So the first is to soft launch and learn. Don't wait forever to get your game out there. Soft launching is okay. And understanding and putting in a strong analytics or events tracking SDK to help you learn how people are actually playing and drawing their expectations and experiences from your game is vital. And it's easy for you to change, and you can get your information out there quickly. And then when you actually release the app as the full launch, you've got a lot of lessons that you've learnt. And secondly, is chase clear and realistic goals. So it's very hard to build a Clash of Clans first try. So don't do it. Have a goal in your head that works. Make sure it's achievable, and make sure that you're focusing on that goal for the next game that you're going to develop as well. Okay? If you work with a publisher, it's a slightly different set of points or recommendations that I've got for you guys. Firstly, choose a niche publisher. By a niche publisher, I mean someone who's going to care about your game in the same way that you do. A lot of people want to fire off their game, fire off the APK to as many different publishers as they can, and they'll sell it to the highest bidder, or they'll sell it to the person that they think is going to do the best for them. Work with someone who either publishes a game in your own genre, or work with someone who publishes in a game in your target market audience. Someone who you really believe is actually going to have the same love for your game that you do. Another hint is to agree some broad changes that the publisher might want to have on your game before you sign. We see a lot of people say, oh, I've got this great publishing deal, and they get started working with the publisher. Then all of a sudden, 3 months later, their game looks nothing like the game that they actually submitted to them in the first place. So it's important to make sure that you actually agree with the publisher what changes you're going to make. Keep your IP. It's really important. If you actually get a hit on your game, or if it moves in a direction that you're really happy with, it's important to make sure that you're in some control to be able to enact a change on your game in the future. And if a publisher's pushing you to actually take your IP away from you, then it might not be the right deal for you. Seek post-release support. A lot of games go out there and they're actually set and forgets. You know, a developer gets the game out and they sit there and they go, great, it's out, it's actually making sales. I don't really need to worry about anything else. All of a sudden you want to make an update and the publisher might not be keen for it. They might have other opportunities going on at the same time. Make sure that when you're actually agreeing a deal with a publisher as a developer, you're making sure that there's room for you to actually work on the title whilst it's a success. And I think Gravity Duck is a really good example of that. Finally, find your next game. A lot of devs out there, they actually get the idea of saying, right, I'm gonna make millions off this game. It's gonna change my livelihood. As long as it makes enough money for you to not have to stop whatever you were doing before, go back to whatever you were doing before you started being an indie developer, and you can actually start funding your next game and working on it full time, that's an amazing result. So don't forget, keep your indie. It's really important, okay? I mean, we all know what happens to indie at the end. So I'm gonna turn it over now to questions, if there's any questions here.
Well, I'll start my first question. You didn't mention anything about crowdfunding and sources like think Kickstarter. What are your opinions on those for indie developers?
That's a great question. So they are, in my view, indie developers are very, very community oriented, as I said before. I think sources like crowdfunding and Kickstarter are great if you've got the community to back you up and you're scared of actually working with publishers who are going to take too much of your game away. My view on it is to source your community and keep your own Indiedentity through that as much as you can. But if you are in a mindset that you could deal with some publishing help, and in my view there's a strong misconception about publishing. I think people think publishing equals marketing dollars, and there are a lot of publishers out there who actually offer a lot more than marketing dollars. So kickstarting is great, or crowdsourcing, but at the same time, you've got to make sure you're pursuing the right thing for you and your game. And I think it's a one-by-one choice in a way.
Questions?
What are the things you need to mind when you're talking about post-release with the publisher?
So when you go post-release, there's certain things that you want to look at, in my view. So making sure you're working on updates together, looking with the publisher at key events or game balancing ideas that have worked on the existing version of your game that's out there at the time, to ensure what tweaks or changes you might want to make to the game to make sure that the game retains or expands in its virality, or any new features that you want to add in there, and getting an idea of how much work that will require, and also who's able to do the work are also some important things. If a new version is coming out and you're thinking that it'll benefit from some form of marketing or promotion, it's also another strong element of post-release support that you'd want to look at. Any other questions?
Okay, well,
Great, thank you.